On the agenda, first thing is to get an approval of minutes from the June 17, 2024 meeting.
I make that approval.
I will second.
Everybody can say aye.
Aye.
So minutes were
I
approved.
can't hear you.
Well, if everybody be quiet, you could. That's pretty simple, right?
I don't know, I'm sitting here now.
Okay, thank you.
Minutes were approved, so I'll turn it over to our solicitor to go over the Melvin King application.
All right, thank you. I'll try to speak loudly.
I can hear you now.
Very good. Thank you. My name is Chris Hartman. I am the solicitor for the zoning hearing board. At the table with me are the three zoning hearing board members, Jeff Enberger, John Reel, and David Rogers. This is the place and time designated by notice to consider the application of Melvin S. King for a variance from section 27-1035.D1 and section 27-35.D2 and from section 27-502 of the Brook Township zoning ordinance as amended to allow the operation of a kennel on property within a zoning district, which in this case is the mixed-use residential district, where kennels are not allowed. In addition, there are some specific regulations concerning kennels in the zoning districts where kennels are allowed, which require a minimum acreage and a minimum required rear and side yard setback, which are also not met by the location of Mr. King's existing kennel. The property which is the subject of the application for the above variances is located at 641 Compass Road, being tax parcel number 22-6-39. As I've already indicated, the property is located in the mixed-use residential zoning district of Brook Township. Before proceeding any further, I want to identify anyone present who wishes to be recognized as a party to this proceeding. Mr. King, can you identify yourself? Okay, so the applicant is present. We will recognize you, Mr. King, as the applicant and therefore as the party to this hearing. Do you have anyone representing you, any attorney or any other representative with you?
I don't know.
Okay, so you're just here by yourself tonight? All right, thank you, Mr. King. I see the township solicitor is here, and by prior communication, I understand that the township wishes to participate in the hearing. So, Attorney Kohl, do you wish to enter your appearance on behalf of the township?
I do, Mr. Hartman. Beth Kohl, Kohl, of the Brook Township Board of Supervisors.
All right, thank you, Attorney Kohl. Is there any other person here tonight who wishes to be recognized as a party to this hearing? Party status would give you the right to present evidence, to cross-examine the witnesses by other parties, and to appeal the decision of the zoning hearing board. So I saw a gentleman who wished to raise his hand. Can you identify yourself, sir?
My name is Avvento. I'm a trustee of the Hunterwork Community Library.
Can you start raising, please?
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Please spell your last name.
A, 2 B's, E-N-T-O.
Can you repeat that for me? I'm sorry, sir.
I'll do it military style. Alpha, Victor, Victor, Echo, November, Tango, Oscar.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And you, sir, are you a resident of Brook Township?
I am.
Can you give us an address?
16 Cherry Drive.
And that's Honeybrook.
That's right.
Now, I just want to understand what the interest is that you might have relative to this matter, and the way I'm going to understand that is is your property close to Mr. King's property, or what is it that causes you to have an interest in this matter?
Well, as the location, I believe, what's our location? 687 is our address.
The library,
It's two parcels.
are 2 parcels away from the King property, and are you describing where you live or where the library is located?
Where the library is located.
Okay, so what is the address of the library? 687?
687 Compass Road.
All right. Thank you for that explanation. I would like to advise the board that I would consider the library to be a proper party to this matter due to their proximity to the King property. Is there any other person present? Yes, ma'am.
Gertrude, McCormick.
And Ms. McCormick, do you live in the township?
I live at 669 Compass Road, and I also rent out 631 Compass Road. That's right next, it's on either side of it.
So I would again advise the board that I believe Ms. McCormick has a close enough connection to the King property that she would qualify as a party. Is there another person present? Sir, in the back.
Yeah, Daniel McCormick. I'm at 100 Angletown Road, Honeybrook, PA. My affiliation is I'm power of attorney over both of Trudy's properties, 631 and 669.
Okay, what is your street address again, sir?
100 Angletown Road, Honeybrook, PA.
To the extent that Mr. McCormick has a legal responsibility for Ms. McCormick, I would also believe that he would have standing to be a party. Is there any other person present here tonight who wishes to be recognized as a party? Yes, sir.
David McCormick. I do not own the house, but I'm the resident of 631 Compass Road.
Again, I believe that is sufficiently close in proximity to the King property to give him standing. So we will also recognize Mr. David McCormick as party. Are there any other persons present tonight who wish to be recognized as parties to this hearing? Yes, sir.
Robert Shirk, 1506 Walnut Road, from the corner of Walnut and Compass.
How close to the King property do you believe your property is?
The Trudy's one property is in between us.
Okay. And could you spell your last name, please?
Shirk.
Okay, so you're essentially 2 properties away from the King property, is that correct?
Correct.
All right, so again, Mr. Shirk has close proximity to the King property, and I would accept him as a party. Any other persons present here tonight who wish to be recognized as parties in this matter? Okay, I don't see any, so we'll proceed with the understanding then that that Mr. King is obviously a party as the applicant, that Avvento is here as a party in his capacity as trustee for the library, and the township is represented as well as Gertrude McCormick is a party, Daniel McCormick is a party, David McCormick is a party, and Robert Shirk is a party. Are there any questions or objections by anyone to any of those persons participating as parties to this matter? Okay, I see no objections, so that will be how we will proceed. moment to get my scorecard ready here. Okay. Further, I wish to inform everyone tonight that anyone who offers to seek evidence regarding this matter will be required to come forward to the front of the room so the stenographer and the board can clearly hear what you have to say. And anyone who offers testimony will either be sworn or will have to affirm the truthfulness of their testimony, and I'll ask the stenographer to help me with that process. Furthermore, public notice of this hearing was advertised in the Daily Local on August 2nd and August 9, 2024. Adjoining property owners were notified by mail of this hearing on July 31, 2024. Notice of this hearing was posted on the property by Edgar Nelson, zoning officer, on August 9, 2024. At this time, the board offers the following exhibits into evidence, and these are all pre-marked exhibits. Exhibit B1 is the application of Melvin S. King for the property located at 641 Compass Road, Honeybrook Township, Chester County, Pennsylvania. Exhibit B2 is a copy of the notice of hearing for tonight's hearing. Exhibit B3 is proof of the publication of the notice in the Daily Local. Exhibit B4 is the affidavit of service by mail for the persons who received copies of the notice by mail. Exhibit B5 is an affidavit of the posting of the notice on the property. Exhibit B6 is a letter of the Board of Supervisors of Honeybrook Township dated August 15, 2024, taking the position of opposition to the variance request from section 25-103.5D1 to allow a kennel on a lot under the 5-acre minimum requirements for a kennel adjacent to a residential zoning district, and taking a position of opposition to the variance request from section 27-103.5.D2 to allow the kennel to be located past the side and rear property line setbacks of 150 feet required when a kennel is adjacent to a residential zoning district. Exhibit B7 is a copy of an email of support that the township received from a happy customer of Mr. King, whose name is Lauren Treitler. Exhibit B8 will be the Honeybrook Township zoning ordinance as amended. Does anyone have any questions or objections to any of the board exhibits that will be entered in the record tonight? I see no indication of any questions or objections, so we'll make those exhibits part of the record. At this time, we're now ready to begin receiving testimony, and I would ask Mr. King if he would allow himself to either be sworn or to affirm his testimony tonight.
Can I ask you to say, please? Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I affirm.
Can you please state your plan, just by your last name?
Bella, K-I-N-G.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. King. Now, did you submit the application that the township received seeking the variances that have been discussed for the operation of a kennel on the property at 641 Compass Road?
I did.
And are you the owner of that property?
I am.
Okay. Can you tell us about your kennel operation on the property? And why don't you start by telling us when you became the owner and what you do with the property?
So, I became the owner 2.5 years ago, a little bit over. We bought the property in the beginning just as a residence, and shortly after, we moved a couple of dogs in. I had 2 acres there, so I thought I was good. Because that's standard zoning for kennels. And then number of puppies kept going up, so I applied for state license, and here we are now.
Okay, did you receive communication from the township that you needed to receive zoning approval? Is that how you got here?
I did after I applied for state license.
Okay, I understand. Tell us, how many dogs you have on property?
I have 2 adult females at this point, and there's 2 puppies there too. That's what I have at this point.
What is the maximum number of dogs you've had on the property?
I've had as much as 7 adults, and I don't think there was ever more than 15 puppies on the property. Generally not.
So would you say the maximum has been 7 adults plus 15 puppies?
Yes.
And tell us, do you sell them from the property, or?
I do, everything's retail, yeah.
Okay. Do you have a sign at the property?
I don't have a sign.
How do you find buyers?
So we have a website, we advertise on our private website, and there's also like platform websites where breeders' puppies are listed together, like Greenfield puppies, Lancaster puppies, also use those.
And what breeds do you have?
We have dachshunds.
Is that the only breed you have?
We had Corgis, we don't have any at this point, but if we would have permission to have a kennel, we would probably go back to Corgis somewhat.
So would your goal be to have both dachshunds and corgis?
Yes.
Can you tell us about the facilities that you have on the farm?
I have a 6-run kennel there now, and that's, the plan is to keep it at 6 runs, and more than that. I have an exercise yard, puppy rumping pen.
There is a sketch that was included with your application, and it shows the kennel as being, I would say, near the center of the property. Is that fair?
It's not in the center, it's leaning more toward the south side of the property.
All right, you don't have a north, south, east, and west on this sketch. The road is at the top of your sketch. Do you recall your sketch? Do you know?
I have it here.
Do you know what compass direction?
So the road is east.
Okay, the road is on the east side of the property. Does that mean the road runs north-south? Okay. So the kennel would then be on the west side of your property, is that correct?
No, on the south side.
Okay, well, I'm sorry. It's on the south side, but
But
it's
yeah, more toward
west
the-
of the barn.
More toward the west, yeah.
Okay. You have a little bit to the north of the kennel on your sketch, something called a small shelter. Does that have anything
That
to
was
do with it?
something that was out in the meadow when I bought the property. I never really used it. They go in there sometimes when they're out in the meadow, but it's never used for overnight, through the winter, through summer, whatever it is.
All right. Are these dogs allowed to roam outside of the kennel and the runs that are labeled on your plan?
Yes, and the exercise yard. I don't have that marked down
that a fenced area?
Yeah.
All right, can you give us any kind of a guide based on your sketch? Is it, does it go from the driveway to the chicken shed, or?
Yeah, it does. It goes from starting at the kennel all the way along the driveway to the corner of the driveway, over to the chicken shed, and then back down to the kennel, a little bit west of the kennel, and then back around. That's size of exercise yard.
Okay. At night, do you keep the dogs inside the kennel?
I do, yes. Now, I should say I've had a couple that I've trained for staying around the property that I have left out, but normally it's not every night.
Have you had any complaints from any of your neighbors about your dog operation?
I have not had about the operation. One time, a dog ran on the neighbor's property, and we did talk a little bit. Didn't give a lot, but I try to keep my dogs they're restrained after that. But I have not had any verbal complaints the last couple of weeks about my operation, or ever since I've been there.
How long ago was it when the dog went onto the neighbor's property?
Well, that's a tough one, but it was last year sometime. I believe last summer.
Do you have any idea how much time passed from the date you became the owner of the property and moved into the house, and the time when you first brought any dogs onto the property for a kennel activity?
We bought the house in February, and we settled in February. We moved on last week of February and brought the dogs on.
All right, so the dogs came on as soon as you began to live there? All right, I'm going to have more questions for you, but I think at this point, I want to ask the board if the board has any questions, and I'm going to get some questions from the other parties that are here tonight, and then I'll come back if I need to ask any questions. So you're going to continue to be asked questions here tonight, and you'll be, affirming everything you have to say. So thank you. All right, I'm going to turn to the board. Do you have any questions for Mr. King?
I have a question. You said you lived there for 2.5 years now. The prior owner that lived there, do you know how long he lived at that residence?
It was at least 4 years, if not a bit more than that.
Thank you.
How frequently have you been close to that max you specified? Not much, or?
I would say that's the high side. Normally I only have, most of the time I was there, I started with like 3 adults and I slowly moved up to 4 or 5. I'd have to check my records, but rarely more than 10 puppies.
Any other questions from the board at this time? With that, I'm going to turn to Attorney Kohl and ask if she wishes to ask any questions of Mr. King.
Mr. King, when you bought the property, did you testify that your intention was to use it for residential purposes?
I think that's what's on the deed, yes.
Is there anything about the property that prevents it from being used solely for residential use?
No.
Is there anything unique about this property that would require it to be used as a kennel?
Nothing there that requires it, no.
You described an exercise area, and I'm looking at the sketch plan that is part of the application, Exhibit B1. Are you aware of the distance on the north side of the property between the exercise area or the small shelter and your northern property line?
Small shelter in the northern property line. I don't have that written down, but I would guess it's probably about 100 or 120 feet.
Okay. What type of state license do you have for your kennel operation?
I have the kennel class.
And how many dogs does that license allow you to have at the property?
It allows, it allows 100 to 150 a year, but that's not puppies. The only number of puppies I'm allowed to sell a year is 59 with a state license.
With the category of license you have currently, is that correct?
Yes.
And prior to obtaining the state license, you were already conducting the breeding and sale of dogs on the property, is that correct?
Yes, because I never checked my zoning, so I had 2 acres. 2 acres is required in Hunterbrook. My number of puppies went up, so I applied for state, and then I got involved with the township.
So essentially you've expanded
Yes.
the scope of the operation in the time you've been, is that correct? What is the maximum number of dogs? I'll rephrase that. Would you intend to breed dogs to the limits allowed by your state license?
Probably close, yeah.
Are you aware if there's any other permitted kennels by the township within the mixed-use residential zoning district?
Can you please repeat that?
Are you aware of any other kennels within the mixed-use residential district that have a township zoning permit?
I am not, no. That have a permit from the township?
Correct.
No, I'm not.
If I told you that kennels were permitted in the ag district, the resource conservation district, and the business industrial district, which are an overwhelming majority of the township, but not mixed-use residential, is there a reason why you think the township regulations shouldn't apply to your property to not allow it at that location?
Well, I guess I was thinking over this tonight, and I decided if the neighbors don't have a problem with it, which there are a lot of my neighbors here, so I'm guessing probably not for me. But I was thinking if the neighbors don't have a big problem with it, then yeah, I don't see a reason why we couldn't.
I think that's all the questions I have right now. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So, I'm now going to go down through our list. Mr. Avvento, can you, now, you're not a lawyer, so I want to explain that this is the time for you to ask questions. I will give you a separate time for you to provide any testimony that you wish to give. So this is the time for questions of Mr. King, and then after we get through everyone with questions, then we will move to another part of this hearing where I will ask you if you want to present any evidence or testimony. So, do you have any questions that you want to ask Mr. King?
I do.
Okay.
Mr. King, how you doing? I'm Avvento, I'm one of the trustees of the library. We have procured counsel for this variance. We had some notes from our counsel. And a couple of questions that she wanted me to present was, number one was, do you have any barriers like bushes, trees, fencing, stuff that separates the boundary of your kennel operation from the residential property?
Yes, there's a tree line all the way around, almost all the way around the property. Well, I should say an L shape, and then the north side of my property has a privacy fence. Running all but about the last 40 feet from the road, all the way back to the tree.
So you have trees, the tree line, which I'm aware of, but you have no other special type of shrubbery or stuff like that?
I don't at the bottom. It's pretty thick at the bottom, especially through the summer, but I could, if that would be a deciding factor, I could plant more for a privacy fence or whatever.
What's the traffic load when you're selling your animals?
It's very rare that two parties are there at one time. It might have happened once or twice. I used to have dogs where I lived before. It hardly ever happens, about one time. Most of the time, there's one party there.
But as you would expand the size of your kennels, I would assume you probably have more people show up.
Yeah, but the size I'm looking for is not going to be bigger than what I was earlier this year. So when I figured out that we have to apply for a variance, we immediately cut our number of dogs down. Because of, I was under the impression that I need, only have a state, if I don't need a state license, then I'm good also at Huntington Township. But I was also wrong on that.
But it is a mixed-use residential property, as previously discussed. So that's pretty audacious, having expanded your animal size in a mixed residential area. I'm just curious. Were you aware that there were? It's an interesting situation.
Was I aware that I was in mixed use, but I was not, no. I wasn't aware of that.
Do you have any other questions, Mr. Vincent?
Is there?
Okay. Trudy, is that your name?
Yeah,
Gertrude.
well, Gertrude, but I use Trudy.
Okay. And how do you want me to refer to you?
Trudy,
Okay. Trudy, this is your chance, and again, as I said to Rocky, this is the time for questions only, and it'll give you a separate time to make any statements or give testimony yourself.
well, there's a building next to your kennel, and that's a business that the guy had that lived there before. You no longer have that business? I thought that's
No,
still
that-
being worked.
That business is no longer there.
Well, I see lights there.
Well, there's lights up in the barn sometimes, I'm up in the barn working, but there's no business there.
That business is gone.
That business is gone, you can go out and barn.
Because I was here before, and the gentleman that owned it before, he got, it was a frame working thing. And it was making a lot of trucks, at least a couple a week, a big tractor trailer with wood and stuff like that going in there. And I was thinking, geez, I didn't think you could have more than one cottage industry on there. And then while the other guy had it, he also had the dogs. But nobody knew about it. But the thing is, I don't know, I have a rental property there, and people don't like that squawking and, the barking, and on Sundays, you could really hear them in the afternoon. They're unhappy about something, I guess, your church, and they're, But, I'm afraid it's gonna evaluate my property. Especially the rental part, I have two properties, but 631 is on the other side of him, but I'm on the other side, and I moved to Honeybrook to have peace and quiet. I used to live in Philadelphia, I've been here for 45 years. And I've been very happy with it so far. But hey, I pay tax for two properties too.
Okay. Do you have any questions for Mr. Kennel?
No, what could he tell me? When he gets more dogs, he's gonna have more cars going in there and get them. When he has more dogs, he's gonna have more dogs outside, they're gonna be open. There is nothing he could tell me that I don't know, because I saw it with the other guy. The other guy that owned it used to have his dogs on the lawn, and then people would come pick out the puppies, and we run them along, and his kids would be playing with them.
All right.
Same thing.
Trudy, I want to get all of your statements in the record. but we're gonna need to swear you in and have you testify, and we didn't get to that part of the hearing yet. So keep everything that you just said in mind.
Mind, you think it's gonna last?
Do your best. But do you have any questions for Mr. King, or is that it? Okay, good. All right. So we'll get back to you, Trudy. All right, now I'm going to turn to Dan.
No questions, sir.
No questions. All right. How about Dave?
I don't have any questions.
No questions, okay. Robert, do you have any questions?
And
Okay. Is there any additional testimony you would like to provide at this time, Mr. King?
No.
Okay. Again, you said you were going to affirm and you're going to continue to be in that status until we finish tonight. I may have more questions, others might have more questions, but we're going to move on then. And I'm going to ask Attorney Kohl, do you wish to present any testimony tonight?
I do.
All right, please proceed.
Do you want me to come up here?
That would
Yeah,
be
I can
great.
hear you better.
Thanks.
Are you, okay, sure, we'll swear you in.
That do you swear affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the truth, and nothing but the truth, obviously?
I do.
Can you just state your full name, please?
Beth Kohl, Kohl. Good evening, Board. As Mr. Hartman read to you at the beginning of this meeting, I represent the Honeybrook Township Board of Supervisors. They reviewed this application at their meeting last week to consider whether they wanted to make a recommendation with regard to the application. And as was read, there was a recommendation to oppose the relief being sought by Mr. King. Essentially, with all due respect for the operation and potentially the quality of the operation he may be running, the Board of Supervisors feel very strongly that they have legislatively worked very hard to accommodate kennels as a use in Honeybrook Township. There has been history of a number of kennels, and they've worked very hard to find places where they are appropriate. In this township, they're allowed in the agriculture, the rural, and the business industrial district. If you look at your township zoning map, that's everything shown in dark green, light green, and brown, which is an overwhelming majority of this township. In those areas, the kennels are allowed, provided you have the proper acreage, setbacks, and buffering from neighbors, with an intention to not restrict the ability of Honeybrook Township residents in the right places to have this type of use. Their primary concern is that this district, the mixed-use residential district, is intended for a different character of use. The mixed-use residential and the neighborhood residential districts do not allow kennels at all. So this is essentially a use variance, which is a very high legal standard for an applicant to satisfy, and they have to show hardship that the property can't be used for what it's zoned for at all before they really should be given a variance to allow that use. In consultation with the township, they've advised that there are 33 kennels which are permitted in the township, and not a single one of those is located in the mixed-use residential or the neighborhood residential zoning districts where they're not permitted. And they're very concerned about setting a precedent with Mr. King's property that their regulations are no longer essential or meaningful when it's intended to protect the community and the character of the community in those portions of the township. As was read as part of the application, this property does not meet the setbacks that are required. As you can see on the sketch that is in the application, the portions of the operation are located as close as 45 feet from the property line. If this was located in an appropriate district and not next to a residential zone, that setback would be 50 feet. But the supervisors considered where those two districts might abut each other. So if you had a kennel in the agriculture district, but it was up against a residential district, in that scenario, they made that setback 150 feet. to protect the residents of those districts. And so what you have here tonight is owners of property, at least Ms. Trudy here, I think, indicating she is one of those property owners that the board intended to protect, with greater setbacks and only putting this use in certain locations. Further, the property is supposed to be 5 acres in size if it's in that type of a situation against other smaller residential properties. And this isn't meeting that criteria. It's only 2 acres. If it was in a rural location by itself, where there was more land, it would be appropriate. Essentially, there's no hardship that's been shown through the testimony of Mr. King tonight. And with the testimony that the intention is to essentially maximize the rights under that state license, the concern is that, a current reduction in the number of dogs is not sustainable. The township doesn't want to be policing the number of dogs on the property, because I think you can appreciate that that's very difficult to do. And so, to the extent there's already a license in place, the township's position would be, it does not want any sort of middle ground on this issue, and would ask the board kindly to reject all of the relief being sought tonight. Thank you.
Does the board have any questions for Attorney Kohl? Okay, hearing none. Mr. King, do you have any questions for Attorney Kohl about what she has stated here tonight?
No, I don't think so.
Trudy, do you have any questions for Attorney Kohl?
No, she must say everything that, I want to hear.
Okay. All right. Rocky, any questions for Attorney Kohl?
No, she's pretty eloquent.
All right. Daniel, any questions?
Yes.
David, any questions?
No.
Mr. Shirk, any questions?
No.
All right, thank you, Attorney Kohl.
Thank you.
All right, now, I'm going to turn to Mr. Avvento. It's now your turn to provide testimony. Would you allow yourself to be sworn or affirm your testimony? Please come to the front row. That would be great if you would do that.
Okay.
Just for affirmative testimony, sure that to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing.
I do.
Thank you. I knew your name, so.
Thank you. I've spoken from prepared comments from our attorney, and I'll leave you a copy. I'm on stand, by the way. It's okay with you. I'm reading from our prepared statements. Dear zoning board members, as president of the Honeybrook Community Library Board of Trustees, I respectfully request our opposition to the proposed application of Melvin King for a kennel with variances from section 27502A, 271035 D1, and 271035 D2 of the Honeybrook Township zoning ordinance. Our opposition to this application is as follows. First, zoning. The proposed kennel within the mixed-use residential zone district does not meet the minimum acreage required in the minimum rear and side yard setbacks. Number 2, noise. Our library patrons anticipate a quiet, welcoming environment. We're expanding our size, so it's going to be even larger. Kennels can produce significant noise which would be counterproductive to the environment of our library. Additionally, our library director holds outdoor programs and activities in spring, summer, and fall for children and young adults. Number 3, environmental concerns. Odors due to waste from many animals in one location, as well as the proper disposal of waste and potential runoff from waste are concerns to us. And finally, traffic. Potential increase in traffic in our residential area due to proposed kennel. We appreciate the support the township has provided us and respectfully request the zoning hearing board oppose the variances for the proposed kennel so it does not negatively impact the library and its patrons. This is your copy.
All right, you can leave that there, that is fine. Thank you.
Are there any questions?
I have a few questions. So you say you have outdoor first children. Do you think at this moment Mr. King has 2 Datsuns. Do you think 2 Datsuns make excessive noise compared to Route 10 traffic?
Well, Mr. King says he had two animals. He had a previous, a larger size before, and I don't know what he intends with the state license to increase that number, what that is. As for the traffic on Route 10, you know, we have been living under that for a while, but I think dogs are a little bit different story with their barking and the noise at all hours of the night, especially when traffic is not very heavy on Route 10. And so, I mean, that's kind of the response that you have to have.
My other question would be, at one time, he said he did have as many as 15 puppies. Would 15 puppies create monumental amount of traffic compared to the addition that your library is going to be bringing that much monumental traffic in?
Well, I'm not an expert on the quality and the quantity of that noise, but it definitely is a factor. I mean, I'm not an expert.
Right, I understand, it's
But
just a
I
question.
believe it's a strong factor for us.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions? Any questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. All right, now I'm going to call upon Trudy. As I said earlier, this would be your opportunity to be sworn and then provide testimony.
Do you swear affirm the testimony you're about to give, be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? I do.
You can sit down if you like.
I'll sit down where he can pick up the slot one. Now, like he was saying, he's got maybe 2 now, but he plans to expand this. To have a lot, you know what a chorus of dogs is like market? I know, I call my son's house in Reading, and he's got 2 dogs, and when I call, it's like a nightmare. You know, I mean, you know, and all that dog shit, it produces flies. If nothing else, I mean, you know, you only have 1 dog, you gotta pick up for all them. And it's not good for anything but produce the flies and smell, you know. And again, it would make it more difficult to rent out my place. People don't want to hear that. Early in the morning, in the middle of the night, I don't know where. I mean, you won't be living there, but I will.
Anything else you'd like to
And no
say?
matter what they say, it never comes true. That other building that they had, they said they would be closed on weekends. They were not. They were open Friday nights until 8. They said they closed at 6. They were open Saturdays. And you weren't there to inspect it. Then the guy decided that he didn't need any fans to you know, for the paint he was using. And I had to come back and complain to you guys so that he could put fans in there to get rid of because the school's behind there too. I mean, I don't know, I'm not happy. I want you to down it too.
Anything else you'd like to tell us?
That's it.
Right. Does the board have any questions for Trudy?
I would have a question for you, Trudy. So you made multiple comments about your land value
Yes.
and your finances and everything else. The solicitor from the township made a comment about a hardship. And we haven't talked to Mr. King yet about a potential hardship, but what if Mr. King would say that if I don't have this kennel, I will lose my home? Do you have a heart for Mr. King?
I mean, he bought that knowing that it was for him to live in. Nobody said, oh, it's a guy before that had dogs there already.
Right,
No,
exactly.
that don't go.
Well, with bidenomics taking place here in America, our interest rates have went from 3% to 9%.
Yeah, we don't
What about if the man
worry
has an absorbent mortgage that he needs to have these dogs to live there? You don't care about Mr. King if he leaves the
I do, but
neighborhood?
I don't think anybody needs to have a kennel to live anywhere.
Well, when it comes back to Mr. King, I will ask him about his hardship, which could present, these are just questions. You know, I'm going to try and be neutral. The man has a business, you have a homestead. We got to kind of meet in the middle here.
I was there before him. I've been there for 45 years paying their taxes.
Well, it on Mr. King's property, then you would
I
have
don't
this
want it, it's
problem.
too big.
Well, that's good, thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions for Trudy?
No, I'll stay here and wait.
Mr. King, do you have any questions for Trudy?
No.
Anyone else? Yes,
You
Attorney
do.
Kohl.
Ms. McCormick, do you believe that allowing a kennel to operate as a commercial business on that property next to you would change the character of the neighborhood around your properties?
Well, sure. I mean, I can remember when I was trying to rent it out. You know, people would say, what's there? They worried about the school, but school is children, you don't have to allow that, that's different. But these are animals and you can't shut them up.
Thank you, nothing further.
All right, if there are no other questions for Trudy, then I'm gonna ask Daniel McCormick if he would come forward and present any testimony he may have.
Do you swear affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, and nothing but it?
I do. Okay, my parents, my grandma, who originally owned the other house, and myself, were all homeowners in Huntington. They paid mortgages for 45 years, okay? They worked, they sacrificed. The whole idea of investing land when we moved out of Philadelphia was to pick up our property values. I also have a property, and when I invested in it, I expected it to go up. I mean, that is what most Americans believe happens, okay, sir? That they take their property and invest. Now, when you put a business or something else that's going to decline the value of your property, I think that's very unfair. That's it, sir.
Is there anything else you want to tell us?
Other than the fact that I am POA, and it's my responsibility to make sure those properties are taken care of as best as possible. I don't want to see property value lost, because we do live in bidenomics. And we do live in a time when our houses are everything, because there's no interest rates, there's no nothing. So please, that's it.
Anything else you want to tell us?
That's it.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Daniel McCormick from the board? Any questions from Mr. King for Mr. McCormick? No? Anyone else have any questions for Daniel? All right, thank you, Daniel. All right, now I'm going to turn to David McCormick. Do you have anything you'd like to tell us? If you do, please come forward and I'll have you speak.
You swear affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, and nothing but that?
I do. So I've lived in that house for around 2 years. It's my grandmother's rental. I do think you guys are fine neighbors. I don't have any quarrels with you. Very nice people. You did raise a good point about Route 10 in itself is pretty noisy. I sleep through that every night. And I am kind of a deep sleeper. Well, on occasion, and it might have been during heavier periods of time that I did hear some dogs, more specifically at night, so I couldn't see the concerns. I am a lot more closer proximity, I think so, on the map. I have a roommate not that longer that I no longer have. He complained more about it, but he might have let it sleep with me. So nothing against them or the company, but living through personal experience, I could see some slight issues with residential. That's all.
I want to just confirm where the rental house is relative to the kennel operation. So, as we've previously talked about, Compass Road runs north-south and is on the east side of this property. So where is the house that you live in relative to Mr. King's house?
So north,
Correct, because we share it.
North, right next door.
Right on the north side.
Yeah. So it's not a massive issue, but I have heard them it could have been at higher volume times. But there is a different, traffic is a sound and dogs are a sound, there's different decibels. Sometimes it pierces the neck more than others.
All right. Anything else you'd like to tell us, David?
No.
All right. Does the board have any questions for David?
I do. David, would you say your residence is the closest residence to the kennel of the neighboring residents?
I haven't seen the map, but perhaps. I didn't get a picture of that, I'm not sure. I am on one side of them, and a majority of my land is, my house is a lot closer to the road, so majority of my land is just backyard. So quite potentially.
And you back up to the school, correct?
Yes. So it's mostly yard, and then the school's behind me.
Thank you.
All right. Mr. King, did you have any questions for David?
No.
Does anyone else have any questions for David? I'm looking around to the group. No? All right. So now we're going to move on to Robert Shirk. Robert, would you like to provide some testimony? Please allow yourself to be sworn.
Do you swear affirm the testimony about the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
So, Robert, what is it that you want to tell the board?
We do appreciate the opportunity. We do. I want to say that. What worries me with this is everybody that has 2 acres, you just open the door for a kennel. That's my feeling. That's really all I have to say.
All right, thank you. Does the board have any questions for Mr. Shirk?
Not actually a question, but more of a comment. I, as Trudy, lived here 45 years, and I've always admired your property. You have one of the most beautiful maintained properties in the whole area of Brook.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. It's very nice.
Thank you.
Mr. King, do you have any questions for Mr. Shirk?
No.
Does anyone else have any questions for Mr. Shirk? Okay, so, there was an indication here we're going to have some more questions for Mr. King now that we've gotten to this point in the hearing. The question of hardship is certainly relevant to the decision by the board, but I do want to remind the board that the first hurdle that Mr. King must cross is a use variance. And there is a very high standard, as Attorney Kohl mentioned, when you're dealing with consideration of a use variance. The general view of how we analyze zoning requests is that if the only issue is dimensional relief that's being sought, such as lot size or setbacks, that factors like economic impact could be more decisive in the decision on whether or not the hardship is sufficient to result in an approval of a variance. But the use variance is a very high standard. There typically is a requirement to show that the property can't be used for another lawful use in order for a use variance to be considered for approval. So there was a question that Attorney Kohl asked, and I want to just delve into that a little bit more. You did make a statement, Mr. King, that when you bought the property, you bought it as a residence, but then you also said that you immediately brought dogs in after you moved in and started operating the kennel. So tell us more about how your use of the property, is residential or is for business purposes, or what really is the story that you have to tell us about your use of the property and how it is that you came to buy this property. Can you provide any additional information to the board on that question?
Starting with buying the property, my cousin owned it, it came up for sale, we bought it. There was a kennel one before, so I did say I bought it as a residential place, a place to live. But I had in mind to have dogs at that kennel. So I'll have to state I did buy it with the intention of having a kennel and residential.
So you knew there was a dog operation there before?
Yes.
What do you know about the dog operation by your cousin? Do you know?
I don't know a lot of details. I don't know how many he had exactly. I don't know how many puppies he sold. I just know he had some.
Do you know how, you said, I thought at one point that the prior owner, who I guess was your cousin, was there for about 4 years, is that right?
4 or maybe a little longer than that.
I think 4 is about right.
Is that right? Okay.
And do you believe he had dogs there the entire time?
I'm not sure if he had it right away or not.
Okay. But did you also hear the testimony by Trudy that people didn't know that there were dogs being, or that there was a kennel being operated there by your cousin? I think that's what Trudy said, is that?
It was, I mean, I don't know if he had license number asked, but I mean, the thing is, you know, I could hear those dogs yanking all the time, and I could see when he had the people come, he laid the dogs out on the lawn, like, you know, hopping around, and they choose what they wanted, but
Okay, what you're saying right now, are you referring to Mr. King's
not
cousin?
him, no, his cousin.
His cousin, okay.
No, no.
So, it sounds like you knew there was a kennel there, is that right?
I didn't know what, I guess I thought what he did was got dogs from when they were bred and held them and gave them to it, I mean, and tried to sell them. I didn't delve into it. I wasn't happy with it, and I certainly wouldn't want it to get bigger. He just had a few. Now just imagine if he goes on with this, selling 59 and having 100, or, can you imagine what that would be like?
How many dogs do you recall, if you do recall, were kept at the property by Mr. King's cousin?
Yeah, I don't know. I saw maybe 10 or 12 puppies. I don't know.
Can I make a statement on that? You mentioned the concern of going to 100 puppies. I currently also serve on Pennsylvania Animal Welfare and Safety, and with the class kennel that Mr. King has, he cannot exceed 60 transfers a year. That includes adult and puppies. So with Corgis, with an average of 6 to 8 puppies in a litter, he could only have, at the most, 3 or 4 breeding females before he exceeds that number and would have to change his class of license.
Well, these weren't Corgis that the other guy had.
Well, I'm not worried about the other guy. I'm looking at King's application. So with his license status, he could, at the most, probably 4 breeding females, and he would go over his numbers of transfers a year.
And you're sending somebody over there to check this all the time? We did it with the other property.
Department of Ag, if he has a state license, Department of Ag will inspect him every year. They check all his records, and if he has more than 1 transfer more than that 60, he has to go to a commercial class license, or his license will be revoked.
Well, I know when they first moved there and they had their Corgi, it was on Facebook everywhere. Everybody in Huntingburg was following their Corgi. He ran away from home, and I'm telling you, it was all over Facebook. Everybody was talking about it. So how's he going to keep these other ones in? This guy was going all the time. I'm not lying, I'm telling the truth, I swear.
That could well be. But under a state license, he will be
I'm
inspected.
going to object to the zoning hearing board testifying about kennel operations. I don't think,
Well-
Making statements about the licensing process isn't the role.
It's a fact with Department of Ag.
Well, I regard it as information that the zoning hearing board member is bringing to this proceeding from his knowledge outside of this hearing. So
Okay.
this is not testimony, and I would not intend that the decision would be based upon these statements that the board member has made, because they are not findings of fact that we would determine in this hearing. However, I think it's valuable to everyone in this room to receive information from anybody who's knowledgeable about the regulation of kennels. So that's why I'm sort of permissive in.
That's acceptable, and I appreciate that. I just want to be clear that should not be part of the record formally.
It doesn't need to be, but
Thank you.
with where I serve on the board of Pennsylvania Animal Welfare, there is so many people that have zero knowledge of what Department of Ag regulations are. And as soon as somebody says kennel, they go puppy mill. I agree, there's a lot of puppy mills, but if you are a licensed kennel, you have a lot that you have to meet, and you are inspected.
Is that germane to this discussion tonight? It's about zoning.
It's about zoning, but
Okay.
we need
No,
to
Wait a
take
minute, wait a minute, we gotta do
Yeah,
one
yeah.
at a time. We can't have a conversation.
Agreed.
Thank you.
The tractor's a mess at the end of this.
I apologize, I should better control it. Anyway, so I do think that we should bring this to a closure. Are there any other questions that the board has for Mr. King or for any of the other witnesses that you would like to receive answers to?
I just have one question for Mr. King. When you purchased the property, I'm assuming at that point you weren't aware of any of the licensing process, is that correct for kennels? What was required and stuff,
I was aware of state protocols,
state protocols?
not Huntington Township. I was aware of some. I was aware I need 2 acres. I was not aware I was in the mixed-use residential zone. And under state, you don't need a license if you have less than 26 dogs.
So I have a question for a solicitor of Honeybrook. And correct me if I am wrong, because you're an attorney and I am not, so you probably have a better knowledge of the law than me. But I've always understood it to be state law trumps municipality law and federal law trumps state law. Is that true?
It is not. Only if the state law, by its language, explicitly trumps. Land use decisions are the purview of municipalities, and the township has every right legally, through the power given to it by the state under the municipality's planning code, to establish zoning, designate what land uses are appropriate in what locations, adopt ordinances to that effect, and enforce them. And there's nothing in the state law related to the dog law that would permit kennels to exist somewhere in violation of local zoning.
Thank you.
I'd like to ask Trudy a little bit more about the history, since you are such a long-time resident.
Yes.
Okay. So tell me what your knowledge of the history of the use of this property is. I mean, we talked a little bit about how Mr. King is using it now, talked a little bit about how his cousin used it for a couple of years before that. What about prior in time to Mr. King's cousin?
Bergeron owned it, Mr. and Mrs. Bergeron, and they had 1 horse.
Excuse me, what was that?
Bergeron. And after that, they got divorced, so they sold, but there was another fellow that bought it, and
let me ask you, Bergerons had a horse, but what was their use of the property? Did they,
It was residential, they lived there, but his wife liked to garden and she liked horses. So she rode around in a Honeybrook parade, she was ready to dive or something,
okay.
yeah.
So was there any business on the property during the time of Bergerons?
There was not.
And can you give me a ballpark about the time period when the Bergerons were there?
Yes, we bought that place in 75. And I'm trying.
And were the Bergerons already there when you bought
Yes,
your
they were
place?
already there.
Okay. And were the Bergerons the only owner up until the time that Mr. King's cousin bought the property?
No. After that, the Bergerons sold it, and then, it was a single man that bought it. He worked for the railroad, but he bought that.
Lynch.
And,
His name was Lynch.
You need his name? Do you remember his name?
Lynch.
Who?
Lynch. His last name was Lynch.
Put on, please. Say that again, I hear pretty
I
bad.
said his last name was Lynch.
Yeah, Lynn.
And then Botman bought it after that.
Yeah, they had it, and then after that, well, he wasn't there very long because he got transferred or something,
All
so
right, the railroad guy, what did he do with the property? What was his use?
he just grew vegetables, and he cooked his meals ahead of time, come home, throw them in the microwave, and that's it. He really didn't do much there.
So, was it again a residential use?
It was residential only.
And there was no business there when?
No business, no.
Okay.
And then when he left, Francis Bogner, I don't know if you ever remember him, you remember him? He bought it, and then they were there quite a few years, then his wife died, and then he moved on to, where's the big spin in the sky?
Heaven.
Where's the big,
St. Louis?
the state, Missouri? But he didn't have a business either, but his wife liked sheep. So he had about 6 or 7 sheep until the wild dogs came and ate them all.
Okay, so the Botners, again, it was a residential use?
Yes, he had 4 children.
And there was no business there at that time?
No.
And are the
Except her
Botners?
cousin, and then right after Botners, then his cousin bought it.
Okay. Thank you. That's the background I was curious about. I appreciate that information. Does the board have any more questions? Is there any additional testimony that anyone here wishes to provide tonight?
Can I ask a follow-up question to Mrs. McCormick?
Sure.
Ms. McCormick, do you have,
You told me?
yes,
Oh.
do you know if during Mr. King's cousin's ownership, any dogs were bred on the property?
Fred?
Yes.
When his cousin had them, I don't know, I saw the puppies. I do not know whether he actually did breeding, or did they come from somewhere, you know, I just
So you saw puppies on the property, but you don't know the
He was
full-
selling them.
You know he was selling, but
Yes.
you don't know if they lived on the property full-time or were bred on that property.
They lived there, but I don't know if they were bred there or somebody brought them there for a kennel or something, I'm not sure.
Thank you.
Okay. Mrs. Shirk, did you want to say something?
I'll tell you what my concern is.
All right, let's get you sworn in, and we'll let you testify as part of your husband's party status here.
Go on.
Susan Shirk.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give, you can truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
And Susan, are you married to Mr. Robert Shirk,
Right.
who has previously been admitted as a party to this case? You're at the same address? Okay, what is it you would like to tell the board?
Sam had moved there. Trudy said about the Corgi.
Yeah.
It did run.
It
It
was all,
around.
it was all over Facebook.
And I had said something to you. And it was 3 miles from Huntingburg, seen it. And then just about a month ago, there was a little black dog on there that was stopping traffic out from your place. So I don't know. I don't know if I have a black dog.
I don't know.
I don't have a black one.
It was a little
A
curly
little
dog.
puppy. I seen that one come out of the corner one day, in the middle of the day.
Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't my dog.
Yeah, I remember they were all up on Facebook. This Corgi appears on your deck all the time, and, you know.
That's my issue. I said to you, it's either gonna cause an accident or, yeah, that's just what I want. I mean, and we love it outside, and I just don't want to hear dogs barking. We had a dog for no more, and if they don't bark,
What use of it?
so, yeah, that's it.
Thank you.
Okay, does the board have any questions for Susan? Mr. King, do you have any questions for Susan Shirk?
I don't.
Does anyone else have any questions for Susan Shirk? All right, I think we're ready then to close the testimony. And the only exhibit, in addition to the board's exhibit, would be the statement from the library, which we will admit as part of the record for tonight's hearing. With that, we will consider the record to be closed. At this point, the board has the privilege of deliberating on this matter. You can deliberate here publicly. If you wish, we could recess into an executive session, and you can ask me any legal questions you might have about the hearing that we have heard here tonight. What is the preference of the board?
To go to recess, executive session?
Okay, so we're going to go into an executive session. We will go into the township offices. To do that, you can all stay here, and I imagine it'll take us a few minutes to discuss this, and then we will come back and see where we're at. Thank you very much.
We have, I don't know if you know her, yeah, she helps us out from all this stuff, which is poor. But, yeah, she looked at, yes, she did a good
And somebody left him out to go potty and I was touch him. I realized he was outside.
You were looking 5 minutes and then it was I was like, okay, like, start like the neighbor doing my thing. They said they
And you know what?
Your brother, your cousin, whatever. It starts at 2:30. Don't come like
I'm really trying to help my neighbors.
you work from there very hard.
I don't know, I haven't lived there in I think I'm a pretty deep sleeper. I mean, Trump's well, also, I can see, I'm living in a neighborhood that is your real estate agent, also, you know. Isn't that the one you're from Soda? No?
Okay. Oh, okay. And so, we go out to breakfast, so we have a second one there. And the show, one that has a lot of shows. Oh my God, I didn't realize what was happening. I enjoy my time.
And he's right about trucks. I know he likes to go over. He's right there, but you see, people don't realize he went through 15 or 14. He went through a fire class.
Okay. So I went back. Pictures. I looked at the state, those pictures all over the state. And I went there, it's 5 years, and then Dan said, I was got cancer of the lung. And he said, he's going to be great. So I'm glad I did, because I had
Simplistic answer.
That was fast. That was fast.
Simplistic answer.
Do you know that Janet used to, she takes it like one time.
Yeah, I knew that, yeah, I knew that. Yeah.
Oh, great, well, could be well.
We still get together.
Trudy, you gotta go to reality TV show.
Yeah, you can see a reality TV show star. Absolutely.
I know.
There's also hearing aids.
But it helps cognitive skills too.
Yep. Well, she's in line, she has a little girl. She does. Oh, I
I'm just like this because I went to an interview today at this moment and we're weddings and such. I was trying to
Oh, they're right.
yeah, I was at an interview with my wife. Hospitality.
That's what she does. She is hospitality. She's pretty good at it. She's one of the trustees, going. She's in the hospitality business.
Yeah, it's like a restaurant house, but primarily restaurant. There's weddings, birthdays, bridal,
on Wednesday. Maybe some other days. Sharon's enjoying it after coming. Yeah, if you guys do like a revolution. If you ever had people come
we do have like,
Then it's
usually we just provide like plates, food, and all, like the catering
because sometimes people are, you know, they think part of that is their treasure. I've been on a lot of.
No, I don't need proof on that.
So do you guys operate as a restaurant besides the comedy events? That was that. You did great. You did great.
Yeah, it's all in-house.
Got a break.
But it's just like some bartenders.
I know. We've been here forever. We've been here
That's very cool. Now I can be the part of, he has like the buffer as well. I've never really worked with
some experience, but like, I have a lot of experience with
Yeah.
and stuff like that. Or just mute somebody. Thank you.
You live, you're with us, or you live around?
I live in the borough, so I actually really walk to the library, but I'm in one. So my apartment in the borough. Well, yeah, that's really have them on the property, so. But when I grew up, I grew up in the renting area.
I'm still here.
I know, it's at church, where we live, our house is always. Like, it's, I don't
When we moved here, we had 3 bathrooms, and because we shouldn't have because of all the stuff that was going in. So we went to the chef, they couldn't find the guy that signed it. So I came here and I said to them, it was a photo, I said, you know what? We're out of here. I said, we have a house, a brand new house with 3 toilets, and we have shit in the box. I didn't know that when it was on there. I got to work the next day, somebody said to me, what'd you say that? I said, was it true? Oh, did? Well, you know what? John said it, but everybody was just, I kind of last month's all the time. Yeah, so we had to get all under.
My cousin, she's slid. Oh my God.
All right, we're gonna go back on the record now. The zoning hearing board has had an opportunity to deliberate on this matter, and on the basis of that deliberation, I'm going to recommend a motion to the board, and then it'll be up to the board whether or not they take any action on that recommendation. And my recommendation to the board would be to reject the application of Mr. King on the basis that he has not met the legal standard for hardship to justify the use variance to allow the kennel use in a residentially zoned district, nor has he met the legal standard for the setback and lot size relief that he also sought for the same reason that he hasn't met the legal standard for a hardship required to grant those dimensional variances. That's my recommended motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the denial.
I second it.
Vote aye.
Aye.
All right, that concludes our official action tonight, but I do want to make an announcement that there will be a written decision that will be issued on the basis of tonight's hearing. That written decision, the board has a duty to issue within 45 days of tonight's hearing. And then there is an opportunity for Mr. King or for any other party to this matter to appeal that written decision. And that appeal period would begin when you receive the written decision and would run for 30 days after the receipt of that decision. And that appeal would need to be filed with the Chester County Court of Common Pleas. Does anyone have any questions about anything that has occurred here? If not, then I want to thank everyone for their attention and for their participation tonight. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice meeting you.
Thanks for coming.
Sure, you can see.
Okay.